I have an awesome guest who is brand new to the Breakthrough family. Ori Spado, the Hollywood mob boss, is here with me today.
Life gives us moments when we have the opportunity to make a choice. And what we choose has the potential to change our lives forever. Join us now for another inspired episode of The Breakthrough. And now, please welcome the creator and host of the show, Jessica Dugas.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Breakthrough Show. My special guest today is the author of the acclaimed autobiography, The Accidental Gangster, where he tells his true story of being the underdog from New York to persevering through all of life's obstacles, to becoming one of the most respected gangsters in Hollywood, to spending 62 months of his life in federal prison. I'm so thrilled to have him here today to share about the breakthrough moments that led him to turning his life around. Everybody, please welcome to the show the Hollywood mob boss, Mr. Ori Spado. Ori, welcome, and thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you, Jessica. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. I was so excited to meet you today. I was listening to some Frank Sinatra before you came on to get in the groove and the vibe of Ori. So before we dive into your incredible story, I would love for you to start off by sharing with us something that's bringing joy to your life right now. Share a little bit of joy in Ori's life.
Well, there's so many positive things that are happening now in my life. But the most joy is obviously my children and my grandchildren that I'm very grateful for. And family is very important. And one thing that I tried to accomplish as a divorced father was remain close with my children. And I think I've done that.
I love that. I know that we have a lot of parents that watch the shows. I'm a mom as well, and I love that the children are what brings you joy, even as you get older and continue to bring the joy. Because we think, sometimes little kids and babies bring us joy, but I love that when they're older, they're still going to bring me joy too. So thank you so much for sharing that. So you have had such a colorful history, and I don't want to give away too much because, as I mentioned, Ori has written a book called The Accidental Gangster, and it has been, I was sharing before we came on today, it was such an entertaining read that even my husband, who's not a big reader, was so entertained and enjoyed the book so much. So I don't want to give too much of that away. But if you would just take us back just for a few moments and share with us a little bit about what were you like growing up. I'm going to assume that as you were sitting around, Sunday gravy with your family, that you weren't sitting there going, I want to be a mob boss when I grow up.
Never entered my mind. I grew up in a very good family. There were 6 children. I was the middle child. We lived in a duplex home. My grandparents lived next door and all my uncles. I was born and the war was just ending when I was born, but all my uncles were in the war. And in those days, when you had a child in a war, you flew the flag in front of your house. My grandfather flew 4 flags. All of his children.
Wow.
All his boys were in the war. We had a shed and we built a door and for the winter time. And my mom cooked for not just her family, but it was all her family, but for my grandfather and all my uncles. So we had a big dinner table every evening. My father worked at Revere Copper and Black Brass, and he made $35 a week in those days. Mm-hmm. He had a large family to eat. We had a big garden. I'm the one who had this faded. We were eating organic food or before people knew what organic was.
I love that.
You know, my mother canned and we stored it, and you know, so uh, with very little money, we did. My mother was able to do good things cooking, so we did eat. Uh, it was a great childhood. Rome. I was born in a little town called Rome, New York.
Mm,
Uh, it's in upstate New York. It was really a great little city in those days. It was an actual city. Uh, yeah, I got a lot of fond memories of Rome, New York.
yeah.
I never liked the winters. Never really did.
Yeah. I know
And I
that's something
still,
that some people you can, I miss the winter a little bit living down here in the South because it's so warm all the time. Like we don't have a clear, it's winter time now kind of weather. So I miss it a little bit, but I know that people that live in the snow all the time, I have many friends in Canada who are just over it by this point.
you know, and anyways, I was brought up. I attended Rome Free Academy. At the age of 18, I joined the U.S. Army.
Mm,
And that was probably the best 3 years of my life.
mm,
Uh, because in the Army, you learn discipline, you learn loyalty, you learn allegiance to the flag, and you learn more things in the military. You know, people like to speak about the mafia with Omerta.
mm.
Well, I'm going to tell you, when they run a secret clearance, and you're given a secret clearance from the United States government, that's a very serious thing,
Yeah.
and it's something that you will always honor
Right.
till
Right.
the day you die.
Yeah.
Uh, I was fortunate, had 3 great years in the service, and then upon my release, my dad was ill. I wanted to stay here in California, and my dad was ill. I went back. My dad said, "You should have stayed in California."
Mm,
I said, he said, "There's nothing here for you." And I said, "Well, Dad, give me a job at Revere. I'll work the night shift. I'll save all my money, and I'll go back to California." Now, working the night shift was not for me. When I got my paycheck, I went out and I spent the. Well, first, I always gave my parents money,
mm.
you know, every week. It was just something that we children did that back in those days.
Right. Right.
Uh, and then the rest of the money I just spent and went to a couple other jobs, and then I ended up as a salesman for the Prudential Insurance Company.
Mm,
And it was something that came very natural to me. I loved the insurance business. I was doing a lot of good for people. Uh, I became a member of the $1 Million Roundtable. I became extremely successful in the insurance business.
wow.
And my ex-wife and I, who were still close friends, we discussed it. If I use the word, if I were smarter then,
Mm,
I never would have left my wife. I would have stayed with the Prudential, and more than likely today, I'd be at least a vice president
mm,
of the. But you know, life had, or the man upstairs had other ideas for me,
mm.
and yeah, it's a
So
good life. I'm still here.
so things are going well, and you served time in the military. You've had a great upbringing. You're in California, and things are going great with your job. What in the world between that and becoming the mob boss of Hollywood? How in the world did you even get that title? How did that happen?
You know, it's all happened by accident. I spun the Accidental Gangster.
Hmm.
What happened? After the Prudential Insurance Company, I got my own agency with a company called Frankie United Life, and I was given Oneida and Onondaga counties in upstate New York as my territory. And one insurance they sold was credit life and accident and health on the financing of loans through automobile dealership. Well, I got all the dealers in those territories. I was growing, and then I was changing it where I was training salesmen in the automobile dealership. I was somebody who wanted to come in and pay cash for a car, why they shouldn't pay for cash and finance it. And I really grown, and I couldn't grow in my territory anymore. I spoke with the president of the company, who was a great guy, George Grogan. And he says, Ori, he says, I'm not going to hold you back. He says, that's another call from New York.
You're okay.
He said, if you want to grow, you're going to have to find another company. I guarantee it. I endorse it.
Mm.
And I found a company out of Battle Creek, Michigan. There were only 4 insurance companies out of all the insurance companies that sold credit life and A&H.
Mm-hmm.
It was old federal. And I became their golden boy.
Mm.
Before you know it, I had over 250 automobile dealers as clients in the state of New York.
Wow.
And I was doing very well, extremely well.
Mm.
And part of the deal with the insurance company was they allowed me the use of the premium to grow my business. So in other words, I was always 1 month behind in what my monthly premiums were.
Mm.
In those days, it was $385,000 a month. And
Wow.
you're talking a lot of money in the
Yeah.
early 70s. And being young, being creative, being very motivated and positive, I wanted to grow more. And I kept thinking of how could I go national? And one day my cousin came to me. He was in the real estate business. He wanted to become an agent for Century 21. And he asked me to review the contract. So I'm sitting in my office and reviewing the contract, and I said, man, this is how I bring my agency national. And I put it all together. I needed $12 million. And my friend Frank Russo, a friend of his, Ross Serpy, who was with Dino De Laurentiis, they were filming The Brinks Shop in Boston. We went there. We sat with the people who did The Brinks Job and all the actors, Peter Falk, James Cassavetes, and Ross said, Dino would love this. So then Frank and I flew to Los Angeles here, met with Dino De Laurentiis, and then I arranged for downtown LA Motor, where brought Dino down. We did a demo of how my things worked in an automobile dealership. And while I was doing that, one of my agents was taking out my secretary and went out with my accountant and his girlfriend. They got drunk. And my accountant thought because my agent was close to me that he knew everything. And he let him know about the deal I had with the insurance company.
Mm.
This guy tried to extort the insurance company saying, if you don't give me the agency, I'll report you to the New York State Insurance Department. Thus, now they're nervous because they don't want to lose their license, because they had another guy who wrote the credit life and A&H for banks. And New York State's a big state for that.
Right.
So they called me. I tried to raise the money. I couldn't. One thing went to another. And I ended up, nothing happened for 4.5 years. By that time, I was remarried, living in San Francisco, and I on my way moving to Los Angeles. 4.5 years later, I get a call from my lawyer that I was indicted. I said, for what? What did I do? He said, mail fraud. I said, mail fraud? What did I do? Where's the fraud? I said, he said, well, because the dealers were mailing the monthly report. I said, that's standard business. But it was mail fraud. 11 counts of it. 55 years in prison.
Wow.
So I had to fight that case. I ended up getting 5 years probation on that. My first indictment ever. In addition, my insurance license was taken back away from me from the government. I had to earn a living. I ended up out here in Hollywood, and through Dino De Laurentiis, Ralph, they introduced me to studios, producers, agents. I became fairly well known, and I became known as a Hollywood fixture. I was good, and I contributed me with my training and my learning of the insurance business, that I was able to sit down, settle disputes in a nice manner with no gun or anything, just trying to explain to people what's right, what's wrong. And that's how that began. And then through the years, I met Frank Costello, I met Meyer Lansky, Carlo Marcello, and then Sonny Franzese. And Sonny Franzese is the guy that I ended up being friends with for over 40 years, until his passing last night.
It's really very, very interesting timing that I wasn't aware of a lot of things in this world. And as I've been preparing for you to come on the show today, I've done a lot of looking up, and that was one name that I really looked into. And so the synchronicity of him passing today is really, really interesting. And I'm so sorry for your loss, because I know I can't imagine really what it feels like when you've been friends with. The 40 years is a long time. It's a long time to have that kind of friendship with someone. So
in today's world, having a friend for 40 years is unheard of.
Right.
But I'm going to tell you something funny. I had the feeling he was going to pass away. In the last 2 months, I could tell the decline when I was talking to him.
Right.
And all of a sudden, he used to be up. I mean, he had his whole mind the day he died. But I'd call, be 6 a.m. here and 9 there. He'd get on the phone. Hey, buddy, how you doing? And so forth. And then he got a little illness, urinary tract infection. And anyway, he passed away last night. But I read every night. I still read. And I'm reading a Daniel Silva book right now. And I like Daniel Silva because his books are like fiction and nonfiction. So it's like an education also. I closed the book at page 103.
Wow.
And that point, I thought about Sonny, and I knew he was going to pass. And I woke up this morning, 4:15. I had a text.
Mm.
Made a couple other calls, confirmed it. And
I would imagine that being friends with someone for that long, you'd have that sort of sixth sense that you just know, what's going on with each other. And I love that happened with you as well, and you just sort of knew. And I'm wishing you lots of peace as you sort of navigate this over the next little while. And I know that he, I'm sure, is thrilled about you telling your story and all of that as well. So it's really interesting though with the timing of things and
yeah,
how we just know.
it's
Yeah. So all of this stuff is happening, and you're the fixer. You're doing all this stuff in Hollywood for other
you
people.
stop it for 1 minute.
Yep. Yes.
Yes, sir. Come on, buddy. I gotta call you back. I'm in the middle of an interview. Give me 20 minutes.
You got it. Call me back. Listen, Sonny died.
I know.
Okay. All right.
You're okay. This is a magic of editing afterwards.
Yeah.
So, so you're doing all this stuff in Hollywood. You're the Hollywood fixer. You're the one that everyone comes to. Time goes by. Now, you ended up being indicted and arrested later on, and spending 62 months in federal prison. And it was called a RICO indictment. Is that correct?
Pardon?
Is it called a RICO indictment?
Yes, RICO.
What does that mean?
Racketeering, influence, corrupt organization.
Hmm.
And in my opinion, and many others, it's illegal.
Hmm.
And even the guy who wrote that there doesn't know how to undo it.
Hmm.
We studied this while we were in prison. It's what Mary Giuliani, or Giuliani, when he was the U.S. attorney, he started it in New York,
Hmm.
using that there for the mafia figures. And it's a charge. You can be charged with a conspiracy. That's one thing. But then you get charged with a RICO conspiracy.
Hmm.
So you can go to trial and actually beat the actual charge, but they can still indict you, or still give you time for the RICO, which is from 0 to 20 years.
Hmm.
And that's why our prisons are full. And they've been using that there. And I think it's wrong.
Yeah. I
Actually,
know that you touched.
actually, I wrote the letter, the president a letter,
Mhm.
and I sent him my book. Because I thanked him for what he was doing in prison reform and other things that I thought he was doing good in.
Mm.
And I just got a thing back from him yesterday.
Oh, nice.
Got a nice thing I'm going to have framed, thanking me for it and so forth with his signature. So, but a lot more has to be done in prison reform.
Right.
Because we house more people in the United States than the rest of the countries combined.
Mm.
And I'll give you an example. I did 62 months. I got 60 months for a 924C, which was a gun charge.
Mm. Wow.
And when the judge sentenced me, he said, Mr. Spado, on the gun charge, my hands are tied by Congress. I have to give you 60 months. If it was not an act of Congress, I know I would have gotten released for time served.
Mm.
Last June, the U.S. Supreme Court found that they're illegal and unconstitutional, and that it should be vacated. What can
Wow.
I do? I already did my time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. My husband and I watch a lot of shows about people in prison and things like that. And there's one particular show that we were watching where a person had done years and years and years of time, and then they found him to be not guilty.
Right.
And so it's like, what happens to all that time that you spent in there? So I think that you're right, that there's a lot of reform that still needs to be done. And I know a lot of people will agree with you on that. I want to ask you, the moment that you were arrested, that moment that they came to your home and arrested you, did you know that that was a moment then that you needed to turn your life around, or did that come later on? Did that realization come later on?
That came later on, because when they first arrested me and they showed me with what they were charging me with,
Mm-hmm.
I laughed at them and I said, I'll be out by dinner time. And I did not know that I was part of a RICO indictment out of Brooklyn, New York,
Right.
until they brought me up into the courtroom and my local attorney came and had the indictment. So I got extradited to Brooklyn. And, I'll tell you something. It's like, even some of the guys in Brooklyn who were on my indictment, they said, Spado, you should have never been on this indictment.
Mm.
And I should not have been.
Mm.
First of all, the two crimes that they say took place never took place. It's a conspiracy again.
Mm.
People talking. They both happened in Los Angeles. Well, I've resided in Los Angeles for well over 40 years. This is my home. This is where my peers are.
Mm.
My peers are not in Brooklyn, New York, which I do think helped me a little bit.
Right.
But what turned me around was being in prison and seeing the turmoil that my children had to go through with their father being in prison. And if it were not for my children, there was maybe only two other people that were putting money in my commissary. Because you can have your commissary in prison.
Right.
My children were there. They supported me. My son and my nephew picked me up when I got out of prison. And I made a promise to my children that I would never go back to prison.
Mm.
I don't want nothing to do with what we refer to as the life in the mafia. And I'm out of it. I don't want anything to do with it or its people.
Mm.
I don't have nothing bad to say about the people, because I found a lot of good people in there.
Mm.
But just, I don't want to be around it. And I keep my word to my children.
Right. I love that, because I think so often I think about times in my life where I've really been struggling or having a difficult time, and it's been the same thing, promises that I've made to my children that I'm gonna get through this, and I'm gonna get through, because they're such an inspiration to me to live the best life that I can. So I love that that was the case with you as well.
One thing that, and I'm sure you read in my book, because I mentioned it a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
If my book keeps one young man
Mm-hmm.
from getting involved in a life or a gang or getting in trouble, then writing the book was well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want the youth to think that what they see on TV and everything, they make it glamorous and glorified. It is nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to live your life always looking behind your shoulder. It's no way to live a life. And the law enforcement in today's world, you're going to get caught.
Mm-hmm.
So I advise the youth of this country, get a trade, go to college, do the right thing, because it's the right thing to do.
Mm. That's amazing advice, and I think it's so good that you are sharing that message now, even though you've been clear about I don't think I should have been I don't think I should have been indicted, I don't think I should have been in prison, but you're still saying, look, my life hasn't been perfect, and you need to do better with your life. Was there any other so you've lived such a very a colorful life. You've known some big name people. I was sharing with Ori before we came on today that I was listening to some Frank Sinatra to get in the to get in the mood for the podcast. You got to meet Frank, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And so you got to you've lived a life where you've gotten to meet all of these incredible people. Do you have any specific regrets, or do you do like Frank says and you look back and you say, I did it my way? What's your thoughts on
Well, you know what? I did it my way. I feel like he wrote that for me. You
that?
know, every Italian boy feels that way too.
Mm.
Frank, I was found to be a gentleman. He was funny. We spent a lot of time at a place on Westwood Boulevard, Mateo's. He knew me, and I sat on. In those days, you could part of the restaurant you could smoke. Where he had dinner, you could not smoke. So he always would come out. He and I be at the bar, and we would smoke and talk. And I remember one night when everybody's leaving, and he gives the valet $200,
Mhm.
and he says, "What's the biggest tip you ever got before?" And he says, $100, sir. Frank said, "Well, here's 200." Frank
Wow.
said, "Who gave you the 100?" He said, "You did, sir."
Oh. He topped himself. He topped
Yeah.
himself. That's awesome. It's funny because you picture how people, how musicians and actors and people in Hollywood, how they are in real life, off the screen and off their songs and music, and I always just had in my heart that he was a good person. I grew up with my grandparents who were big Frank Sinatra fans, and I just always had it in my mind that he was a good person. So thank you for affirming that for me.
He was.
So tell us quickly about your book, The Accidental Gangster. Like I mentioned, this was a fantastic read. I love when I can read something and it's not only informative about, a story, telling a story, but that it's entertaining. And I was thoroughly entertained by this book. Did you know at any point in your life, based on the amazing life that you were living, that you were going to write a book, or tell us a little bit how that came to be?
Well, here again, I never dreamed that I would write a book. But because I'm an avid reader, I have been all my life since I was a little boy. Right to this day, as I told you, I still read.
Mm-hmm.
And in prison, you know, my two main things were reading and walking the yard.
Mm-hmm.
And I read over 300 books while I was in prison.
Mm.
And walking the yard, you got time, you think. And I often thought, well, because I read, if I wrote a book, what would I think about my life? And I came up with the name, The Accidental Gangster.
Mm.
When I got out of prison, a very dear friend of mine, who's also my entertainment lawyer, his name is George Hain. A lot of people approached me, wanted to do a reality show with me, this and that. And I've been around this town a long time. I know who the people are, who really are, and who's not. And so George and I went to Four Seasons, having dinner. He said, "Ori," he said, "you got to write a book. I know your story, Ori. You write a book." He said, "We'll get a movie made."
Mm.
I said, "George, I never wrote a book." He says, "Find a writer." And all the writers I know out here in Hollywood are script writers.
Right.
It's a big difference. So I couldn't find anybody, and I thought about it. I was on supervised release, so there's still a lot of places I couldn't go and things. I didn't want a chance being violated. No, I just woke up one morning and I started writing my book.
Mm.
I was a third or better than a third through when I called my cousin back in Rome, New York. He said, there's somebody here who wants to say hello. It was another kid, Tom Burst, that I went to high school with. We're talking, bringing each other up to date. And he said, Ori, do you remember Dennis Griffin? And Dennis, we went to school with. He said, Dennis is a writer, and he's writing books about things in Las Vegas. I Googled Dennis, and sure as heck, he was a writer.
Mm.
I emailed him. He called me right away, and Dennis is my co-writer. And that's how the book was born.
I love it. And like I said, everybody needs to pick up a copy of The Accidental Gangster because it is one of the most entertaining books I've read in a long time. And it was good timing. Like we just finished watching The Irishman on Netflix. I know you've had some thoughts about that as well and sharing a little bit about the difference between real life and Hollywood gangster life. So I've seen that on some interviews you've done as well. So what's next for you, Ori? What are you just enjoying the success of your book and your life as it is now, or do you have some more that you want to do?
One thing that several people have told me, and one thing that I think that I can make happen, and I hope that it happens, is we're trying to get a TV series off the book.
Mm.
We're working on that. I have two writers that are writing the pilot and the first season's overview at this time. I've had several producers that have approached me already, want to option the book. I will not option the book. I'll sell my rights if somebody wants to come and pay me a lot of money. Netflix, Amazon, Apple, somebody like that. But I'm privileged to be very dear friends with Nick Pileggi, who wrote Goodfellas, Casino, and he's a very close friend. He'll be here next week and back in Los Angeles.
Mm.
He lives in New York here, so he'll be here a few months. So when they're finished writing the pilot, then Nick will go over it. Either give it a pass, a thumbs up, or a thumbs down, make what changes are necessary, and then I could turn it over to an agent to sell.
Mm.
And in Hollywood, I know things.
Yeah.
It's a process. Things take a long time here.
Yeah.
There are no overnight wonders in Hollywood, as people in the rest of the country seem to think.
I know. Well, it's interesting too because we have I have a gentleman that's an actor coming on the show later on this season, and he's out there in Hollywood as well, and he is also a screenwriter and has a short that he's working on, and he wrote it a long time ago, but it's right now it's going through all the film festivals and things like that. And I said, when am I going to be able to watch it already? And he's like, it takes a really long time. People that have been in it haven't even seen it yet. And I said, well, that would drive me crazy. I'm so impatient.
People don't realize the average film takes 12 years.
Wow.
12 years.
Yeah.
You know, you've got all these studios and there's all the glamour and all this there. But when you combine all the studios together, they don't make that many films a year.
Mm.
It's the independent producers,
Right.
and now you got the streaming services. And I think someday it's all going to go to streaming.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have a TV show or a movie, if you could pick like the person that was going to play you in the movie, who would you pick right now?
Tom Hardy.
Yeah. So I can't wait to see it. I really hope that it goes to TV or movie. My husband and I are big, and that's what we do in the evening when he works long hours, and when he comes home, get the Netflix going or something, and we watch shows together. So I really hope that that's one that we're going to get to watch here sooner than later. Would be awesome. So
Yeah.
it'll be a lot of fun. Ori, thank you so much for giving us your time today. If you could leave everybody with one thought about a big thing that you learned on your journey, or a big aha or breakthrough moment that you've had in your life, what would you leave with everybody today?
You mean one of the greatest moments of my life?
Yes.
The birth of my children.
Hmm.
What's better than that?
I love it. I love it.
And to be 75 years old and still be blessed with my children calling me, texting me, and being close to them.
Hmm.
What else is there in life?
True.
You know, it's not how much money you got in life, because at the end of the day, money's not that important.
Hmm.
It provides us for the necessity that we need. But if we don't have the family together, we got nothing.
Hmm. I love it. I love it. Focusing on family, bringing it back to family. That's what's important to me here too. So thank you so much for sharing that part of your life with us. And thank you for giving us your time today. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. And guys, make sure you check out the Accidental Gangster. And we know we're going to be watching a show or a movie or something. But get the book. It's on Audible as well. So if you're not a reader, I have it on Audible. That's how I listened with my husband. And it's like you can close your eyes while you're listening to the story, and you can picture it. You can see it. And I love how real it is and entertaining. So make sure you guys check that out. Ori, thanks so much for being here with me today.
Thank you very much, Jessica.
All right.
Today.
You too.
Thank you, everybody. God bless.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Breakthrough. Please visit our website at www.thebreakthroughshow.com. And be sure to join our After the Breakthrough community powered by Patreon. We look forward to seeing you next week. Same time, same place for another inspiring episode.